37 days. That is how long the war lasted. 37 days of American bombs falling on Iran. 37 days of Iranian missiles hitting Gulf states. 37 days of oil prices doubling. 37 days of the world holding its breath. And then it stopped. The ceasefire was announced. 2 weeks. The Strait of Hormuz to reopen. Talks to begin in Islamabad, Pakistan on Friday, April 10, 2026. But here is the single detail that sent shockwaves through Washington. The detail that had Democrats calling it an extraordinary surrender. The detail that had people in Tehran dancing in the streets. The Strait of Hormuz was already open before the war started. That is correct. The condition that America accepted to pause the bombing, the condition that Iran agreed to, was simply a return to the situation that existed before the first American bomb fell on February 28th. 37 days of war. Thousands of lives lost. Oil from $65 to $126 a barrel. And the ceasefire condition is open the strait, which was already open. You are watching History in the Shadow. Like and subscribe for more. Welcome to History in the Shadow. I'm your host, Ho. Let us start the story. When the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury on February 28, 2026, the stated objectives were clear and ambitious. 3 goals, publicly announced. Goal 1, neutralize Iran as a military threat, destroy its ballistic missiles, its air defenses, its navy, its proxy networks. Goal 2, eliminate Iran's nuclear program, destroy Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan. Seize or eliminate Iran's stockpile of 60% enriched uranium, enough for approximately 10 nuclear weapons. Goal 3, regime change. The hope that military strikes and popular discontent would topple the Islamic Republic. In the first hours, the scale was genuinely staggering. Approximately 900 strikes on day 1 alone. Iran's supreme leader killed. The IRGC commander killed. The defense minister killed. Iran's air defense largely destroyed. Trump said from the White House, "We will never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon." Many analysts assumed this would be over quickly. The regime would fall. Iran would capitulate. The Strait of Hormuz would never be seriously threatened. None of those assumptions survived contact with reality. Iran's response surprised almost everyone. Yes, Iran's conventional military was devastated. Its air force essentially eliminated. Its navy sunk or disabled. Its missile launchers reduced from over 2,500 to approximately 150 operational systems. But Iran was not fighting a conventional war. It had spent 47 years since the Islamic Revolution of 1979 preparing specifically for this scenario. Not the scenario where it wins a conventional battle against the United States. The scenario where it survives one. Iran's strategy had 3 components. First, the Strait of Hormuz. Within hours of the first American strikes, Iran declared the strait closed. Coastal missiles, naval mines, attack boats, and explosive-laden small vessels disguised as fishing boats began targeting commercial shipping. Major carriers suspended all transit. Oil prices doubled. The global economy started shaking. Second, regional expansion. Iran launched Operation True Promise IV. Waves of missiles and drones hitting American bases across the Middle East, Gulf state capitals, airports, oil facilities, not to defeat America militarily, to make the point that this war would be expensive for everyone. Third, survival. Absorbing the punishment, not breaking. Keeping the government functional through a decentralized command structure specifically designed to continue operating even if the top leadership was killed, which it was on day 1. Khamenei was dead. His son Moshtaba became the new supreme leader. The IRGC continued functioning through its regional commanders, each operating independently. The regime that was supposed to collapse simply did not collapse. Now here is the part of this story that the Western media almost entirely missed at the moment it happened. Pakistan brokered this ceasefire. Not the United Nations. Not China. Not Russia. Not the European Union. Pakistan. Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif had been working the phones for days. Pakistan holds a unique diplomatic position. It is a Muslim-majority country with close ties to both the Gulf states and to Iran. It has its own nuclear arsenal. It has a functioning relationship with both Washington and Tehran. And it had strong, practical reasons to want this war to end. Energy prices were rising and regional stability was collapsing. Sharif appealed to the American side to extend the deadline and give Iran more room to negotiate. He appealed simultaneously to Iran to consider a ceasefire framework that could be presented to both sides without either losing face entirely, and it worked. When the ceasefire was announced, it was Shahbaz Sharif who made the public statement. With full humility, I am pleased to announce that the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States of America have agreed to an immediate ceasefire effective now. I invite their delegations to come to Islamabad on Friday, April 10, 26, for further talks toward a permanent resolution of all disputes. The Pakistani Prime Minister announcing a ceasefire between America and Iran in Islamabad. This was not the world order that existed on February 27. Now here is where the ceasefire becomes genuinely extraordinary. Trump accepted Iran's 10-point proposal as the framework for negotiations, not America's demands. Iran's proposal. Let that sit for a moment. Before the war began, America's position was Iran must give up its enriched uranium, dismantle its ballistic missiles, and end support for proxy forces. These were prerequisites for any negotiation. Iran's 10-point proposal, which Trump has now agreed to use as the basis for talks, is something very different. Point 1. Iran must receive a guarantee that it will not be attacked again. Point 2. Not just a ceasefire, a permanent end to the war. Point 3. Israel must stop attacks in Lebanon. Point 4. All American sanctions on Iran must be lifted. Point 5. All regional conflicts against Iran's allies must end. Point 6. In exchange, Iran will reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Point 7. Iran will charge a fee of $2 million per ship transiting the strait. Point 8. This fee will be shared with Oman. Point 9. Iran will set the rules for safe passage. Point 10. The fee revenue will be used for reconstruction of war damage. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy said on CNN, if you accept even part of the Iranian statement, Donald Trump has agreed to give Iran control of the Strait of Hormuz. That is extraordinary. The country that was supposed to be crushed is now negotiating from a position of remarkable leverage. It would be dishonest to present this ceasefire as a complete Iranian victory without acknowledging what Iran lost. The losses are enormous. Thousands of Iranians died in the strikes. Civilians, military personnel, scientists. The infrastructure damage is staggering. Bridges bombed, power plants hit, oil facilities targeted. The Sharif University of Technology, one of the top 100 universities in the world, was struck by Israeli aircraft. Iran's air defense is gone. Its navy is largely gone. Its missile program is a fraction of what it was. The economy, already in crisis before the war, has been further devastated. And yet the streets of Tehran are full of celebrating Iranians. Because from inside Iran, the question being asked is not, did we win militarily? The question being asked is, did we survive? And the answer, against all expectations, is yes. The regime is still there. The country is still there. The government is negotiating. From Iran's 10-point proposal, with America agreeing to use it as the framework. Al Jazeera's Tehran correspondent said it clearly, the Iranians are talking about victory. They think everything now is in favor of what Iran has been looking for. They think there will be leverage for Iran and a kind of control over the Strait of Hormuz in the future. Leverage. Control. These are not the words of a defeated country. Here is a detail from the days before the ceasefire that demands attention. America's Treasury Secretary spoke publicly at the Economic Club of New York and stated that the United States had deliberately created a dollar shortage inside Iran, deliberately engineered an economic crisis to destabilize the Iranian economy and create conditions for political unrest. Think about what that means. For years before the 2026 war, Iranians were taking to the streets. The Women Life Freedom protests of 2022, the massive January 2026 protests suppressed with thousands killed, the economic suffering, the currency collapse, the inflation, the unemployment, driving millions of Iranians into the streets against their own government. The United States Treasury Secretary is openly saying, we made that economic crisis happen. We engineered it as a strategy. The people suffering in Iran's streets were suffering partly because of deliberate American policy designed to make them suffer enough to revolt. This is the contradiction at the heart of American-Iran policy for decades. There is one party to this conflict that is not celebrating today. One party that is furious, confused, and feeling profoundly betrayed. Israel. The ceasefire was announced without Israel's meaningful participation. Israeli officials confirmed publicly that they were not told about the ceasefire until it was nearly finalized. The reason is clear to anyone watching closely. There was genuine concern in Washington that if Israel was included, Israel would find ways to sabotage the negotiations. So the United States cut a deal with Iran, brokered by Pakistan, without its closest ally region being meaningfully involved. Israel feels the ceasefire was done over their heads. Trump made commitments without consulting Jerusalem. The special relationship they were publicly celebrating has a significant crack in it. The 37 days of war did enormous economic damage to the global economy. Oil prices went from $65 to $126 per barrel, the fastest rise in the history of the global oil market. Described by economists as the largest energy supply disruption since the 1970s oil crisis, the crisis that caused global recession, fuel rationing, and political upheaval. Major shipping companies suspended transit. Supply chains across Asia were severely disrupted. Fertilizer prices rose 20%, adding to food price increases worldwide, because up to 30% of internationally traded fertilizers also transit the Strait of Hormuz. Trump was forced to suspend sanctions on Russian oil to compensate for the Gulf supply disruption. The president, who campaigned on maximum pressure on Russia, was giving Russia a sanctions exemption because his own war created an energy crisis requiring it. Now, with the ceasefire and the strait set to reopen, prices will begin falling. But the economic damage done in 37 days will take considerably longer to repair. On Friday, April 10, 2026, delegations from Iran and the United States met in Islamabad. Iran's side was led by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, the man who had been Iran's most public voice throughout the war. The agenda was Iran's 10-point proposal. All 10 points. These are not small negotiations. Each point represents a massive diplomatic undertaking. Lifting sanctions requires congressional action in the United States, and there is no guarantee that Congress will agree. The guarantee of no future attack is essentially asking America to make a security commitment to a country it just spent 37 days bombing. The question of who controls the Strait of Hormuz, on what terms, with what fee structure, this affects every oil-importing nation on Earth. There is enormous optimism in Tehran right now. There is deep skepticism in Washington. And there is barely controlled fury in Jerusalem. The 2-week ceasefire is exactly that, 2 weeks. What happens in the negotiating rooms of Islamabad will determine whether this becomes a permanent peace or simply a pause before the next phase of conflict. Here is the honest assessment that no amount of optimism should obscure. The parties have fundamentally different definitions of what success looks like. Iran wants sanctions lifted, a security guarantee, control of the strait, and recognition of its regional role. America wants Iran's nuclear program permanently dismantled, its missile program eliminated, and its proxy networks ended. Israel wants Iran unable to threaten its existence. These positions are not easily reconciled. They may not be reconcilable. During the ceasefire, there will be violations, because in a conflict of this complexity, complete cessation of all hostile activity is essentially impossible. Every violation will be used by hardliners on both sides to argue that the other side is negotiating in bad faith. And there is still the question of the 440 kilograms of enriched uranium, still underground at Isfahan. Unverified. Unsecured. The nuclear scientists who built the program still alive, their knowledge intact, impossible to bomb. Step back from the immediate details and look at what this moment actually represents. 37 days ago, the most powerful military alliance in modern history launched what it said would be a decisive campaign to eliminate Iran as a nuclear threat and destabilize its government. Today, Iran's government is still standing. Iran's foreign minister is in Islamabad negotiating on the basis of Iran's own 10-point proposal. The United States, whose Air Force Secretary said America had unchecked dominance of Iranian skies, lost an F-15E, had an F-35 hit by Iranian missiles for the first time in history, and had Delta Force fighting in the Iranian mountains with 2 C-130s deliberately destroyed on Iranian soil to prevent their capture. Pakistan announced the ceasefire that ended the biggest war of 2026. None of this is how the war was supposed to go. And yet here we are, with a ceasefire, with talks scheduled, with oil prices beginning to fall and shipping lanes beginning to reopen. The world breathed out after 37 days of holding its breath. Here is what actually happened. America and Israel launched one of the most powerful military operations in modern history. They killed Iran's supreme leader on day one. They destroyed large portions of Iran's conventional military. They damaged its nuclear program significantly. Iran did not collapse. It closed the Strait of Hormuz. It fought back across the entire region. It survived the decapitation of its leadership, and it entered the ceasefire negotiations with its own 10-point proposal on the table, accepted by the United States as the framework for talks. Pakistan brokered the deal that stopped the shooting. Iran's foreign minister personally thanked Pakistan's prime minister and the country's army chief by name. Trump said, "I am prepared to stop bombing and attacking Iran for a period of 2 weeks," and in the streets of Tehran long after midnight people were still celebrating. Not because there is no damage, not because the losses were not real and devastating, but because the country is still there. The government is still there, and it is heading to Islamabad to negotiate. The war that was supposed to end quickly is paused. The regime that was supposed to fall is talking. The strait that was supposed to stay open is reopening, on Iran's terms, with Iran collecting fees. What happens in Islamabad will tell us whether this is the beginning of the end of a conflict that has defined Middle Eastern geopolitics for nearly half a century, or just the end of the beginning.